Welcome back, 3D scanning experts. The brand new Pop 3 3D scanner has arrived and we're going to test it out in this video. This scanner has been sent to me by Revopoint for free, so thanks for that. But as always on this channel, this is an independent review, so I'm not paid to say anything positive, so I'm going to be super honest. Just want to let you know that because this video is going to be a little bit longer than usual, there is chapters, so you can jump to the right section that you're interested in. The first part is going to be scanning with the computer, then we have a part where we're scanning with the mobile phone, and then we have the conclusion. So feel free to jump around and watch whatever you want, and I hope you like this video. Let's go. Now let's take a look what's part of the standard package. So of course, the scanner itself is always part of the package. And then we have a little tripod that you can use to put the scanner on the table. It's also extendable, so you can put it at different heights to have different scanning angles. Then we have a battery pack for the mobile scenario for using it with your smartphone, and also a smartphone holder which gets screwed on to the battery pack and then it gets attached to the scanner. That's your mobile scanner. And then we have also cables, of course. We have a cable for the mobile phone and we have a cable to use the scanner with the computer. There's a few accessories also coming. This little turntable here, which is adjustable in speed and also the direction. Then we have a little scanner table dish that we need to assemble to make the surface of the turntable bigger. And it also has these scanning dots to make scanning a little bit easier. Of course, we have a manual coming with the scanner. Then we have another cable adapter, USB-C to USB-A. Then we have this little sticky pad coming. I'm going to show you in a second what this is for. Of course, with every Revopoint scanner, you get this reference head that you can use as a first object to scan, just to test out the scanner if you have nothing else. And then a few more things, scanning dots to have additional markers on bigger objects or objects that have a surface that's quite even. And then also a plastic sheet, which you can use to cover parts of objects that you don't want to scan. Because one of the things with this scanner and all the other scanners is they are not scanning anything that is black. But we'll see that later. So let's start with stationary scanning using the turntable and the tripod. And how does it work to assemble all of this? First of all, we have this small turntable coming in a package, and you can put smaller objects on top of it and it's just going to turn clockwise, counterclockwise, and the scanner is going to pick up the object. Now, if you have something bigger, you can assemble this little dish here that's going to be coming on top of the turntable. And how is it attached? Well, simply working like this. You have this sticky pad that I mentioned already, and the sticky pad goes on top of the turntable, and then you can just slap the bigger dish on top, somewhat have it centered, and then you can also scan bigger things. Of course, this is not so stable, so really heavy parts won't work. I don't recommend using this for things that are like heavier, like the bigger lion statue that we sometimes use for testing scanners. That's where you probably want to get a bigger turntable that can hold a higher weight. But for all of the objects that we're going to test out today, this is probably just good enough. So let's take a look at the objects that we are scanning today. We're using 5 objects of different sizes, and we're starting with the smallest one, which is the Playmobil girl with the ice cream. And this one is clearly below the recommended object size. In the manual, it says have something that's around 20 centimeters of size. So we're going to see if this still works fine, if we can all capture detail and also the color information. The next object is the Revopoint reference head. Of course, we're going to scan that. The next one is this little Campervan here, which is small and also has some color information, some external details, also some internal details. So we'll see if this works fine. Object number 4 is this deer figure, which we already have scanned and 3D printed in the previous test. I'm using this one because it's not reflective, and this is going to make our life much easier. And we said we want to focus on things today that are not black, because black is not picked up by any of these scanners pretty well without scanning spray, and it's not reflective. And number 5 is this little globe here, which has some colorful features. It is also a little more challenging because it has a round surface, so I'm gonna see if the scanner can still pick up the orientation correctly. And if all these tests work out fine and we can scan all these objects without scanning spray, I'm gonna make these 5 objects my future reference objects for any future scanner tests. I'm also gonna run the same scans using the older models, so the Pop 1, the Pop 2 and the range scanner, to see the differences in quality. That's something for a future video. So let's set up the turntable and the computer connection so we can get started with the first object. So this is how your scanning setup usually looks like. You have your scanner set up here on a tripod. You have the turntable and put the objects in the middle, turn it on, let it rotate. The speed is somewhat slow, so you can even turn it down a bit. You shouldn't have it set too high because otherwise the scanner might lose track of the object. Once this is all set up, we connect the scanner to the computer and start RevoScan 5 to create our first scan. RevoScan 5 is a completely new version of RevoScan, looks completely different from the previous versions, and it is the version that only works with the POP 3 and the previous models, but you cannot use an older version of the software with the new scanner. So we start by hitting New Project, and immediately we'll see what we are supposed to scan now. We have in the lower left corner a preview of the color information, so the color view, to see whether we are aiming at the correct angle. So make sure they have the object in the center, and we also have the correct distance. This is shown here on the right hand side, where we see we have an excellent distance. If we move the scanner closer to the object, you will see we are too near now, and it's also disappearing. And once we pull back, we'll see that we have a pretty perfect distance, and then we can start scanning the object. As soon as you start the preview mode, you will see that these two LED lights start flashing and illuminating the object. And this is a new feature of the POP 3 that all previous scanners didn't have. This LED flash makes it easier for the scanner to pick up the surface detail. It's more independent from the room lighting, but it's still good if you have equal lighting in the room, so you have no harsh shadows being casted onto the object. Once we are sure that we have set up the camera correctly, that we have the right angle and the right distance, we can start our scan by hitting the Start button. And we immediately see the scanner picking up the object, and I think this is pretty impressive compared to the previous versions. This works much better, to be honest, and it's picking up the detail and the color information of this little Playmobil figure quite well. Now, once we have a full rotation done, what I will do is I will hit the pause button to change the camera angle and point it a little bit more from above onto the object. So let's hit pause here. And now I am adjusting the camera angle, so I'm putting it a little bit higher so we can get more information from the head of the little figure. And now I hit start again to continue scanning from this different angle. And software picks up the new orientation and continues to do another round of scanning, filling in the gaps that we didn't see from this horizontal angle in the previous scan. So I guess we can now stop the scan and wait for the final result to check our quality and the mesh model. So this looks pretty nice. Now from here, what we could do, we could either add another scan if we would have to turn the model around to scan it from a different angle, which we don't do with this model. And the next step would be to convert the point cloud into a mesh and then also add the texture. All these steps can be done automatically. What we will do now is have the point cloud fuse. That means it will also filter out points that are somewhat not part of the object, that might be errors, and then it will construct a mesh that's just a pure surface information into triangles. And then lastly, it will add the texture. We can do this all at once, so you can already see if you turn this object that there is a few gaps here, things that we missed scanning because they are only visible from the underside. So for example, the inside of the hand or the underside of the cap, or here the arms or between the legs and even like the feet. So the question now that you have to answer to yourself, is this good enough for me? Because now what we can do, this doesn't happen automatically. You have to do this yourself by going into the manual edit mode and say, am I fine if I just close all the holes now? And this is going to override our previous texturing and meshing. So we're doing this just to see how it looks like. And this is the result of basically just closing all the holes. It wasn't so successful here with the feet, so there is still a few open gaps. So the best strategy now is really to go back into scanning mode and fill in some of the gaps by turning the object to the back. We can just do this by continue scanning here. So we'll turn the object and lay it flat on the turntable to try to fill in some of the gaps that we still have in this scan. And then we try again to merge it into one. So let's go. And the thing that has to happen now is that the scanner software picks up the object and identifies what's the orientation, because it's now in a completely different position. And that is the hardest part, to get it right. Now it's picked up the new orientation. Sometimes this doesn't work. That just means you probably have to slightly readjust the position of the object or the camera position, and then you most likely will be able to continue scanning like this. So I'm going to give it a full turn now, and you see we are filling in most of the gaps that we had. Once this is done, I'm going to complete it again. And now one more time we go to the edit mode. Let's just try to fuse the point cloud so we see how the quality looks like. This is our new version of the point cloud and looks much better. So we filled in a lot of the missing pieces. Still not perfect, but I would personally say I would go from here and have it do the mesh construction. That looks much better than the first try. And I think then we can just go and texture it. This might look like it's textured, but this is a little misleading. It's just using the color information and putting it on top of the raw model, but it's actually not colored if you would export it from here. The actual combination of the model and the texture is happening once you have done the texturing, and from there you can export it. Great, we seem to be done, and I think from here all we need to do is just export this into files. That's done here by exporting the model. We say texture model. Then we have to choose the right format. I personally would always go for OBJ because that's usable in 3D printing software and most other construction programs. So this was the first result, the first scan. And you see it takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of time to get into the software. And sometimes you have to redo things, go back a step, put the model in a different orientation. Sometimes it doesn't pick up the orientation immediately, so you have to readjust a few things. But I think it's fairly easy to do. And what I will do after editing this video, I will put all the scanning results from all these models that we're doing now into a folder on my website. So we have a little page there where we can all download these files. The link is in the description of this video. Also compare it with other scanners as soon as we are redoing the scans with all these older scanners and also with newer models. So you'll always have a place to go and compare the results and download always the same model files for different scanners to compare the quality. So let's go to the next model. This is the head that comes with every Revopoint scanner, and scan that to have it as a comparison with other scans and see some more of the detail. And we're not doing a color scan this time. So this is the model of the Revopoint head, so the Roman head. Looks pretty nice, and I see a lot of detail here, so I'm pretty happy with this result. Didn't close the bottom successfully, but this can be done later. It's not a problem. So far so good. Let's move on to the next model. Now the Campervan is a little more challenging because it is hollow and it also has black wheels, so I'm curious if those black wheels are going to be scanned successfully, because usually the scanner doesn't pick anything that's black. But if that would be the case, we could also apply some scanning spray. I think if it just picks up the external hull, I would be still happy. So let's start the scan. So I think we're off for a good start here. Picking up all the external details. I'm not gonna do anything with scanning spray for this test. So we're gonna stop here and do the top, because that's missing. See if it can reorient. That's working. And I think we're good. Complete this scan. And what we certainly could do now, we could turn it and scan it from the bottom, which I don't want to do at the moment. I just want to see how it looks like when it's just oriented like this. That's good enough for a test. This is how it looks like the Campervan scan. As expected, it's not scanning the wheels because they are black. But still, I mean, this is a nice result, just having the outer shell in good quality. It even did pick up some of the reflective elements or more shiny parts like this rail here on top. Probably the color is a little bit misleading us from the actual surface details. So if we turn off the texturing, it's a little more rough. What is a little misleading in the software is that you cannot turn off the color information completely. So even if you just go back to meshed, it is still applying some of the texturing for some reason. I need an option to have it just showing it in grayscale so I can see more of the detail information. But if we export it and open it up in another program, we can see that much better. To process it further, you would definitely have to edit it. And for 3D printing, you probably would have to add in the missing details, or you would have to scan it for more angles. So let's continue to the next model. So for these last two objects, which are slightly larger, so around 20 centimeters of size, we have to do a little different strategy than the previous three models, because these models are too big to scan them in one piece. So the scanner is set up at a certain distance, which is the best distance. But when we set up in this distance, we cannot see the whole object. That's a little different with every single scanner. So this scanner is supposed to be scanning smaller things. And the range scanner can cover a greater field of view, so it can potentially scan a bigger object in one piece. But to succeed with this kind of scanner with bigger objects, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it on the turntable and take the scanner into my left hand, and then I wait for a full turn during the scan and then move the scanner slowly up so it can cover all the area and all the pieces, even from above. We can also try to scan it from below, just moving it a little bit down. But you have to do all of that very slowly. Probably you will need a few tries to be successful, but eventually this is the best way to do it with bigger things. So the scanning is complete. Looks like a decent result so far. Let's convert it into a point cloud. Also, the fuse point cloud looks pretty clean, and we're gonna go for the final mesh and closing all the holes. Very good. And so far, I would say this is absolutely something that we could 3D print. What I really wanted to see is if we can really scan this, because it has this more difficult part here on the upper end, but it looks pretty decent and would probably not differ so much from the original. So we're coming to the last object here, the globe. Now, in the first place, I was thinking this must be working just as it is, so the camera should be able to pick up which side is the camera looking on, to pick up on the detail of the globe and realize, okay, this must be this side of the globe and here's the other side of the map, and so to determine the position of the object. What I didn't know is that it is not using the color camera information to do that. It's only relying on the infrared camera, and the infrared camera is not able to pick up that kind of information. That makes it necessary to use scanning markers, which is a little bit of a pity because we are covering a lot of the surface and we're not going to be able to scan all of the surface details with color and texture information. So at any given moment, when you use marker detection, the camera has to see about 6 to 7 markers. Otherwise, it's going to tell you, I need more markers. So we have to put on quite a lot of markers onto this object. And generally, scanning markers are quite expensive. So that's something that you have to keep in mind when you go for this. Now, another method that would work better with this kind of object that is symmetrical, pretty homogeneous, and has not so many features is photogrammetry. And I've shown you this in other videos. Because photogrammetry is mostly you're scanning something static and the camera movement is determined by also looking at the background information. So if I'm moving the camera, the background is changing and the software can realize, oh, the camera must be moving, so it's now in a different position, and it can use the center object and doesn't have to use only the center object to determine the actual position. And that would be much easier to be scanning objects like this. So, but this is a completely different thing here, and we will have to use the scanning markers. So let's do that in the software. I'm going to show you how to do that there. So now we're in Revo Scan, and you can already see I have switched to tracking mode, marker tracking. So there's two different modes here. Feature tracking, which would be using visual information only, but not looking particularly for markers, and this marker tracking mode is identifying the markers much better, and so it's detecting the position of the object using the markers. Now I'm gonna take the scanner into my hand here, and we're starting with a little bit of more distance, which is also working, and then we're starting to scan. Now you can see the markers are these red dots here, and it's able to use them to track the position of the globe. But in the later result, you will see that, of course, the markers are covering some of the visual information of the globe, and so we're losing that. And sometimes it tells you I need more markers, so now we only see 5. So it's already struggling, and that means sometimes you probably have to redo it and add a few more markers and start all over again. And now I'm trying to cover as much as I can of the surface area of this globe. We're still in the upper section, and I think I made a full turn now and can move a little bit down to slowly also cover the lower areas. But we have to do this very slowly and carefully so we're not losing track all the time. See here, we have not many markers now. Yeah, need more markers. So let's move back up. Oh, it's catching up again. So you see, this is not easy. So sometimes that means we have to start all over. Now, I will try to go back a little bit to have it see a little more, so we can slowly tilt the camera down towards the stand where we have a lot more markers already. So it should have an easier time now to detect the position. So sometimes you have to play around a little bit and try different things. And you also see here on the right hand side, we're pretty much at the distance, so where it's already telling us we're too far away. It's still working, but we shouldn't go much further back. Yeah, it's already struggling again. It doesn't see so many markers anymore. So again, it is challenging. I think we had one full turn now, and I'm stopping here. So you see this can be challenging. Now I'm calculating the final object, and we'll have a look in a minute. So here we have the fused point cloud of the globe. This looks pretty good, but there is a risk that these areas here above and also below not gonna be closed later. So we're gonna have a look at the next step, which is the mesh construction. Again, I think we have some issues here at the top and at the bottom. Still, I think it is something that shows that this type of object, you might think that it is easy to scan, but it's actually a challenge. And the challenge can all be solved by using scanning markers. And we probably would have to put more scanning markers on this object, do more scans, maybe do it from different angles, put everything together, merge different scans to get a final and proper result. This is not the scanner's fault or the software's fault. It's really the type of object, and was the biggest surprise to me. But honestly, that's the point where I probably switch to photogrammetry and use that method, but it's much more expensive. So the investment into a proper photogrammetry setup with camera, lighting, automated turntable, everything that you can imagine that's required, it's probably a few €1,000 compared to a few hundred for the scanner. So you can't expect to have every object that you want to scan be working out of the box. So probably scanning spray in some cases helps. I've shown you this in other videos that scanning spray can be a huge helper. But in terms of color information, scanning spray is either covering that, so you're not going to get the color information, or if you use the transparent scanning spray, it's probably still not working with this type of object that's completely symmetrical with not a lot of features. And then you would still be using photogrammetry to solve that problem. So as my next step, I want to try out scanning the deer using the mobile setup. I'm going to walk you through how it works and how the workflow is. especially when you have scanned something, how you're going to continue working with the file on a PC. That's an interesting workflow. We have this smaller, shorter phone cable that's connected on one side to the scanner and then goes into your phone. For Android phones, this works using the USB cable, and iPhones can only use Wi-Fi. I think that is a little advantage for the Android phone because the connection here is USB 3.0, so it's probably more stable. On the other hand, we have the power plug that goes into this mobile battery pack here, and we have to make sure that we are not covering any of the cameras. And then we're starting the Revo scanning app to start a new project. Starting a new project works as on the PC. We have to select what kind of accuracy we want. So we go for high accuracy, we want feature tracking, and we have a normal object and no color information in this case. We want to scan, so let's start. And then we're pointing the camera or the scanner towards the object. This looks very much the same as on the computer. So here we can first make sure that we are pointing in the right direction. Then we can adjust the camera exposure, so it's a little bit too dark in depth camera. And then we can hit the start button here in the middle to start scanning. I'm gonna wait for a full rotation like we did on the computer, and then I'm moving up slowly with the scanner to cover the rest of the object. In the lower left corner of the app, you can see the memory usage. So that's quite important because if you run out of a local memory of your phone, the scanner will stop scanning. You should have a phone that has a decent amount of memory. With the range scanner, I ran into some issues with that. So just to let you know that 6 GB of memory, probably something that you should have. I think we're doing good. Now we are doing a complete scanning. We could do all the post-processing in the app on the phone, but what I want to show you is how to move this file over to the computer without reconnecting, disconnecting, anything. So we just move in the app, we move back to the start page where we see the file now, and then we move over to a computer. And in RevoScan 5, we're clicking import from phone at the home screen. And then it says, okay, connect your phone now and hit share. So what we do in the app is we click the share button and share to PC. And then we enter the same code that we see on the screen. So 6878, it's just a random code every single time. And on the computer, you see now the file is being transferred over. I think that's a pretty nice feature, because now we can continue editing the file on the computer, which is, in my opinion, much easier than on the phone. So transfer is complete, and we can now see the file has arrived. Just open it, can do the usual things. We can do the point cloud fusion and then the mesh construction. And then from here, we can continue editing the object, exporting it to 3D printing. So you get the idea. It's a pretty easy process. You can do everything on the phone, but you can also easily transfer the file to your computer and continue working from there. So I think really a nicely designed process. I didn't see this yet on any other 3D scanner system, but on the Revopoint. And this works for all of the Revopoint scanners in the same way because it's built into RevoScan. I hope this gave you an overview of the process, with pretty much in depth what you can expect from the scanner. The question is still, do you want the Revopoint Pop 3, or should you go for the range scanner, or should you go for the mini scanner, which I don't have? Well, the answer pretty much depends on your use cases. I think for the average use case, for something in the middle, like 20 centimeters of size, a little bit smaller, a little bit larger, the Pop 3 is pretty much the sweet spot. The price is around 600 euros, 650, depends on the package, and there is a premium package that also contains a tiltable turntable add-on. I think you don't necessarily need that all the time, but it can be useful for more automation in the whole process. The range scanner is better for bigger things. It also doesn't work outside, so don't expect to go scanning your car, except it is in a garage and with a lot of scanning spray, of course. But this thing generally works better with bigger things, but it also can scan down to probably something that's 20 centimeters of size. So it's also quite flexible, but you have to make the choice basically depending on the object size that you want. And the mini scanner is definitely something for very small things like jewelry or coins or something like that. When you want to do product presentations on a website of these kind of things, then probably go for the mini scanner. But the whole range of Revopoint scanners, each scanner has its own purpose, so you have to make the decision yourself. I would say the Revopoint Pop 3, you can't do so much wrong, and if you go for a much cheaper 3D scanner, there are also going to be some compromises in the scanning quality, and especially what is impressive about these scanners in general is the software side of things. The software is so perfect now, and it has this interconnectivity between the mobile scanning and stationary scanning. It works perfectly with a turntable, it works mobile. So I would say it's really something that has evolved over time into a very, very stable state, working really perfectly. So no worries about that. If you want to get the Revopoint Pop 3 or any of the other models, I have put a link down in the description so you can get it and check it out yourself. If you like this video, I would be super happy if you hit the like button. That's gonna help the video spread to more people. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos, and I'm happy to see you back again on the channel next time for another video. See you smiling faces, and I wish you a good week. Bye bye.